Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Yvonne Priest Show. I'm your host, Yvonne Priest, your little ray of darkness. And today we will be talking to Australia's most prolific directors. But not only is he a director, he writes, he acts, and he produces. A quadruple threat with a cult following here and abroad. Currently with 11 features under his belt with more to come. We're talking to Nathan Hill today. Welcome, Nathan.
Hello, how are you? How are you?
I'm good. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm very good. I've been looking forward to talking to
It's been a long time coming, and it's about time that we made it happen.
you.
And I'm very glad to have you on the show.
Thanks, man.
So, how would you describe your work to the general audience out there?
Um, I had two bits of good press recently that I liked. One guy said I was the cult auteur, which I think sounds pretty good.
That's good.
And then I had another one call me a one-man antipodean film industry. So somewhere in the middle, I reckon they're good titles. Good titles to have.
That's pretty good titles. What
Yeah.
made you want to make film?
Oh man, it's couldn't even avoid it if I tried it. I was born into it. Um, without sounding like all those other people. When I was a boy and I acted since I was five. So the funny thing is, I actually have acted since I was five.
Oh,
But yeah, I have. But it was sort of more like church, community, and fates and stuff, congregation. Because I grew up in a vicarage. Because a lot of people don't know that my father was a priest.
oh,
So yeah, I don't think you knew either.
no, I didn't know that one.
I don't think so. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. So I grew up like in a vicarage, and so you'd have huge congregation, and you'd always have church fetes, and I'd put on shows, for people. And I was only 5 years old. I remember I built my first set and painted this set, which was a gelati bar, and I sung the gelati man song, however it goes. I can't remember. And we just did crazy stuff. And whenever my dad was doing readings or something from the Bible, when he used to translate biblical stories, he'd get me to quite often play it out to the kids that were in the congregation. And so I'd dress up in plastic knight's armor and do all sorts of stuff. So it was kind of entertaining, when when I was a kid. But then also my grandfather, he was a pianist and he was a projectionist in the war. So for all my birthdays, starting from like 4 or 5, he'd project silent black and white horror films in the living room, and he would score live on the piano.
oh, wow.
And so it was a very, I'm trying to think of the word. It was really the birth into film for me. It was audible and visual, stimulation. And so, you'd invite all the kids over, but I'd be glued to the screen like this because I was so into it. Watching Bela Lugosi, Boris Karloff, Lon Chaney films, and then I'd turn around and all the kids would be gone because I was like petrified 5 minutes in of all this horror images, but I was glued to it. But I specifically remember seeing in black and white the first ever shot of Nosferatu, and I think I was 5, and it freaked me out. I remember just stopping. What the hell is that? I couldn't figure it out.
Yeah.
The first full length movie I watched, which was black and white, was the Hunchback of Notre Dame, and at the end of it, when he sort of he's poised on the top of the tower, hugging a statue, a gargoyle, and he sort of turns to it and he says, "Why couldn't I have just been like you?"
Mm-hmm.
And I started crying. It had a massive impact on me.
So, is that for
So
your love of film in general, or is that your love of horror films? Because I know that you're a big horror fan.
I think I started with horror.
Yep.
That I was obsessed with it, and I think my parents were kind of a bit worried about it because I was really obsessed,
Yep.
and I would stay up, right into the night because back then, you had Friday night horror on TV, or you'd get the Green Guide, and I'd circle all the horror movies, and they'd be going all night. And so Friday nights I'd have a marathon, and I was only in primary school, and
Mm-hmm.
I'd be watching. There's an audio recording I found of me recently. we'd just do crazy stuff like we'd record each other. We'd put an audio tape in a player and press record, just random, and play it back later and see what we'd discover. And I found this one of me saying my mum saying, go to bed, it's bedtime. And I'm like, no, I've got to stay up till 3 a.m. and watch the Snow Beast. Like I was listening to myself as a kid. It was just crazy. But also, she was an amateur photographer, but she had set up the laundry as a dark room. So the first time I saw film develop was a shot of me at home in the laundry/dark room that my mother had taken.
Oh.
So I saw myself in film developed, and that had an effect. Nice. So it was the pianist grandfather, it was the projectionist, it was the photography, and it was an amalgamation. But then also what was happening was on the other side of the family, I had an uncle that was a chief carpenter. I think I've told you about him. He did the sets on Queen of the Damned and Crocodile Dundee. He was the chief carpenter on Moby Dick, Noah's Ark, all that. Mm-hmm. Legend of Guy, passed away a couple of years ago. And then there was another uncle who back then was the sales rep for Thorn EMI Australia, which is predecessor to Village Roadshow.
Yeah.
And he was the head sales rep. So he was right in there. And he gave me my very first job in a video warehouse when I was about 14, 15. And I would clean covers of VHS cassettes. That was my job, cleaning ex-rental covers so they could resell them.
Yeah.
But I was looking at all the covers. I was just in the warehouse reading all the blurbs and synopsises. I was just embellishing at it. So someone would come down and go, "Hey, are you working?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, no, I'm good." But I was actually just reading. I remember there was a stocked fridge with cool Coca-Cola. So I would pop, they'd say, just help yourself. So here was this kid, after school, I'd ride over there. I was in heaven because I was having my cans of Coke. I was reading the blurbs of all the movies in peace and quiet. I had a whole warehouse to myself. And then they'd say, "Oh, help yourself to the posters." There was like a loft. So I'd go up there and I'd grab all the posters, roll them up, put them in a canister, attach that to my racer and ride home with this big grin on my face, and then plaster my whole wall, my bedroom wall, even the ceiling, so I could lie in bed and still see films. And that's when the Lost Boys came out. And I specifically remember taking a canister of Lost Boys, and because you know how it's red backdrop with the black and white characters, mm-hmm. and I would cut out the characters, and I had one whole wall in the room which was like a mural. It was nice. You would have loved it.
Yes.
So things like that, the video store, the warehouse, the few family members, and then I found out that my mother's auntie, who I based a short film on her character when I was experimenting, was a Broadway actress, and she lived in Africa for a time. And so I found right back, like we're talking early 1900s, she was acting. So as I went back and forth, I would find family that was either connected to the entertainment industry in some capacity.
Oh, wow.
Mm.
Apparently, we found there's a director somewhere down the line in Hollywood, but we have no idea who he is.
That's cool.
He just has the last name. Apparently, we're all related by name or blood, but we don't know who he is. He could have taken it. I have no idea.
Surprised. I'm not surprised knowing you now and everything. I'm not surprised. I think, I was saying to someone recently, I said, this guy was sort of putting himself down, and I said, "Mate, listen, you're the remnants of history. Whoever's past is past, whoever's gone is gone. You're here now, and whether you think you're good or bad, you're also a part of history. And if there wasn't history, you wouldn't be here either. So you've got to you don't sometimes know how powerful you are until you embrace all this stuff.
Yeah, exactly. No,
or do a DNA test and find out that you're 10% African.
Apparently, I'm Spanish somewhere down the line.
Oh, I can see that.
Which for some reason I've always thought that.
I can see that.
Yeah.
You're like you've got the Elvira. You've got like you're very Americana. You've got a bit of that Spanish. You've got all those flavors.
Yeah, it was. I know because my mum. I always thought there was Spanish somewhere on her side, but it's actually on my dad's side. It's my grandmother. And I
Well,
started learning Spanish during one of the lockdowns. And I was like, out of all languages, why did I want to learn that? And I started learning it.
wow. Well, I met someone the other day and I said to them, what nationality are you? And they said, we don't know. And I said, what do you mean? And it was two girls and sisters. And they said, oh, well, our grandmother was adopted. And I said, well, then you have to do the DNA test.
Mm.
So they'll never know. I mean,
Yeah.
imagine people like that. It's full on.
Yeah.
Man.
So with your catalog of movies, you haven't done a horror feature yet. And
no, I have.
But
you got to classify Tomboys as a horror.
Yes, Tomboys, yes.
Which is one of the first, because people forget about it. But Tomboys, and then it got re-released as Fox Force. I mean, that's really a horror. That's the first. But I know what you mean. You're probably thinking more current, because you and I are so familiar with the current stuff.
Yes.
Because I look at my filmmaking as kind of like two renaissances, where the first half is the hidden and hide and seek and Tomboys and seance, which is actually pretty heavily horror. Yeah. And then the second renaissance, which is Jasper, model behavior, Guilo, color, portrait, all where I'm acting in them,
Yeah.
And then there's the other stuff I've acted in that someone else has directed. So it's kind of like 3 chapters to it almost, to the career so far.
With the current part of it, even you mentioning that you were a fan of The Lost Boys, you were actually due to make a film with Corey Haim the year he passed. So is there anything you could tell us about that one?
Unbelievable, man. So I remember I was at my mother's house because it was her birthday, and she's born on the 10th of March, and it's a very special day. And he died on the 10th of March. So I was at her house and I got the news, and I was in pre-production and I had a green light and I had funding, and I'd gone from Tomboys getting international distribution. It was doing pretty well, and I was making a name for myself. But then I went and shot Seance, and when I was shooting Seance, and that film didn't go as well, it just wasn't as hype. There wasn't enough hype and money behind it. But I remember shooting it, and I got a call saying, he died, and I was just like, this is ridiculous. And then someone said, keep shooting. And I said, well, I can't, because I've set up the whole film for him. I can't even picture anyone else in the role. But then the primary investor from Nevada, he became terminally ill. So the movie wasn't going ahead anyway. So I was like, well, this project's cursed. And this is one I was telling you about that was heavily involved with the occult.
Oh, yes.
And I've since read and discovered that a lot of guys have had occult films that have crashed or damaged careers or damaged them. It's a very dangerous thing. Now, you must sit there and go, oh, well, my dad was a priest. He's retired now. I haven't gone to church for a long time. This was more in my youth. I'm not a Bible basher, if anyone's wondering. In fact, they probably more thought I was like Alice Cooper because I was a rebel, But yeah, there's something about it. There's something about it, and it's dangerous. It's dangerous because when you are making a proper film, the way I look at it, you're an alchemist and you're conjuring. And if you're on that subject for too long, it's dangerous.
Yeah.
So I think when you're meditating on those really dark themes, you've got to be careful.
Yeah.
Because you're inviting it into your subconscious and consciousness and your life, So that bombed. And I was majorly depressed because I know for a fact that if that had have gone through, my whole career would have been very different. Yep. But it was actually my good friend Nick Levy, who's a producer, who kind of rescued me because he knew that my heart was so in this film to just direct. And that's how my career had been set up. But he knew I could act, and he knew I had acted. But I used to act for my money to get my next film done. I didn't used to act to be an actor. I used to say, well, I can act. I'll act to do, get this little bit, and then I'll try and make my next film. But then he cast me in Confessions of a Lady Killer, and it opened the Australian Film Festival, and it went gangbusters. So then I kind of found that my personality and my humor could go a long way. Mm. So then Jasper was kind of like the lady killer in a fictional setting. And I had been dealing with tomboys and these dark themes for so long, for years. I did Jasper out of kind of rebellion, because I was like, I'm sick of being in a dark room, dealing with rape revenge. I want to go out there and do a comedy, and I'm going to throw myself in it, and I'm just going to have a blast. And
Yeah.
that's what I did. So that was like an explosion, and then out of that came all these other films. So I was like, oh shit, well maybe that was the career path. And then and people used to say to me, oh, Nate, I'm glad, we're glad that you're in Melbourne. If you weren't in Melbourne, the local industry would have been really dull.
Yeah.
And you've rescued films, and you can be the indie film, to get the platform for people to go and do the commercial film. And so I was like, oh, that doesn't sound too bad. And then I kind of embraced who I was and what I had, and I've just been working on that really, since then. Have I got aspirations to make Black Mass again, or a big budgeted feature? I don't know. I'd have to think about it, man. I think. Yeah.
Well, you've developed quite a cult following here in Australia and overseas, which is great, because we don't do too many genre stuff here. Or when we do, I just feel like they just don't work because people don't really understand the other genres besides a drama or a comedy in Australia. And
Yeah.
films are essentially like a love letter to 90s thrillers, as I like to describe the Channel 9 late night ones that you'd watch. And you don't see people making those.
Yeah, it's funny you said that, because another friend I've made online recently, Jay Harang, who has his channel, his YouTube channel, he's reviewed a couple of my films, and he's roughly the same age, a British guy, and he's the same. He loves those sort of what do they call them? Those daytime movies.
Like they got a Hallmark kind of thing.
Yeah. I've gone blank. But yeah, the thrillers, basically, the love triangle thrillers, and
Lifetime.
Lifetime, that's the one. And the B grade films, and they are fun, because the thing about them too, Shell, is, or should I say Yvonne?
Yeah, go on.
Is that they're easy to shoot.
Yeah.
But I mean, a drama is the easiest thing to shoot, and thrillers are a drama with a bit more tension, maybe a little bit more skin, a little bit more language, a little bit racier, but that's more entertaining, because obviously, dramas they're pretty flat, So I think thrillers are just the extension of that. And it's not quite horror either, because it's in the middle, because I think you've got drama and you've got horror, and thriller's in the middle. And the reason why I love thriller is because, or suspense, is because it's mature.
Yeah.
And you can believe it, because you can have a drama that just goes on and on and on, and maybe it's a bit niche, or if if you don't connect with that specific topic, you're kind of zoned out. And then if you've got a horror, again, if it's very genre based, or it's like, it could be creature feature, it could be zombies, it could be, vampires, if you're not into that, kind of specific thing. But thriller is always, I think, relative.
It's human based.
And yeah, and it's easy to shoot. That's why I've been doing them. I think they're really fun, and you always get to act with new people, and you always get to write a slightly different story. I was watching this thing with Schwarzenegger, and he was saying how he made the same movie, but the budgets just got bigger. And I kind of feel like that with the thrillers. It's like I've made the same film, but I've just changed the direction a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I think Colorblind and Eye Portrait and Lady Terror, they're very similar in the premise. It's a love triangle gone wrong.
Yeah. Do you find that they're a bit more welcomed or a bit better received in America, because they do love Australian cinema as much as
100%.
We pump out oh my God, if I can talk, we pump out all the horrors, but it's nice for them to get something a little bit different from us.
100%. Like, the thrillers are still really alive and well in parts of America, and particularly North America and Canada. And people don't realize, the people in Australia don't realize that that's where most of my audience is, and that's where I've done really, really well. And they love these films. And even with Lady Terror, based it on Blown Away, the Corey Haim one. I was talking to a guy in LA who's in the film industry, and he said, "Oh, we welcome more versions of Blown Away. Like people just love it. You know, they're obsessed with film. That's what I love about the States too, because they're obsessed with film. It's like a staple. You know, like here it's so sports based. You know,
Yes.
it's. I mean, you know, I live here and I've got family here, and you and I are Australian and blah blah blah. But like for me, it's like it's pretty boring. You know, it's if you're not a big drinker, if you're not a sports bet guy, or you know, you're not a football or cricket lover, or you know, you kind of are a little bit outcast. And I had those problems in school as well. You know,
Yeah.
not not kind of fitting in with the norm.
Yeah.
You know. In fact, you'd love it, but in later primary school, they used to call me the gore freak because I was obsessed with horror films. And in show and tell, I would bring in horror memorabilia and posters and stuff, and had a really crazy one where I brought it when Thriller came out. Michael Jackson's Thriller came out, and I brought its full size poster in to show and tell. And this teacher, who was as conservative as you could get, was just horrified that my parents had condoned this and had a go at my mother. So what I did is I went home. I said, "Mum, you know, Mrs. Blah, blah, blah said that you're not a good parent." I stirred it up. So then my mum went, "What?" So then she came back and went into the class and like had a go at this teacher, and the teacher denied everything. And I'd look at all the other students and they knew she was lying. So I got the whole class on side. And then they loved me for it because I kind of tricked, you know, the teacher in front of everyone because she was lying and my mother had went right through it. But that was a good thing about my mum as well, because she'd always support what I was doing. So what she did was she was clever, because if you're watching a lot of, because I used to watch rated R horror films,
Mm-hmm.
and people would say that's wrong. You know, you can't let a kid do that. But because she gave me the freedom to do it, it was never really, it wasn't taboo.
Yeah.
If she had said, "Oh, don't do that," or, you know, slapped my hand or taken the thing, oh, then I would have been like, "Ah," and then I would have tried to seek it out my own way, and it would have
Mm-hmm.
got messy. But she said, "Oh, no, just let him watch it." But she'd be very clever. She'd say, "But what is it about the film you'd like?" And I'd say, "Oh, I love this horror bit, this death bit." And she'd go, "Oh, but what do you like about that death bit?" I go, "Oh, I love where the blood's coming out of the arm and the guy's getting ripped apart." She said, but you wouldn't do that to me. What do you like about it?" And I said, "Oh, I love the makeup. I love how that's constructed." And she went, "Ah, so you love the making of how this is going down, not that someone's being killed." I was like, "That's right. I love the makeup effect."
Yeah.
So we broke it down. So once she knew that I was watching it because I was specifically interested in how they pulled off the mise en scene,
Mm-hmm.
then she let me go nuts. And that was awesome. So other kids would come over, you know, as I was saying, and, you know, they'd be running from the house after 15 minutes because they couldn't handle it, because it was the first time they'd seen Freddy Krueger or Jason Voorhees or Leatherface. It was, you know, they were seeing these characters for the first time in my house and freaking out because it was so left field. But for
Yeah.
me, it was almost daily. You know, the amount of horror films I watched was just, it was absolutely ridiculous. You know.
My parents pretty much started this for me, as much as my dad will
Yeah.
say, "Oh, but horror movies are for guys." And I'm like, the funnel's the most
No.
important thing in a horror movie. What are you talking about?
Wow. Well, I know more women like yourself, particularly the scream queens and stuff like that in LA, that are into horror. I know more women that are into horror than men.
Mm, yeah.
Yeah.
Because my parents were watching A Nightmare on Elm Street, and I walked in, and my dad's like, "You
Yeah.
can't watch this, you'll get scared." And I'm like, "No, I'll be fine," because I was watching Beetlejuice at that time. I was watching Poltergeist. I'd seen this stuff, and I think
Love
my
that.
dad let me watch it a little bit to pretty much say, if you get scared, that's your fault.
Yeah.
And I thought Freddy
Yeah.
was great. I thought he was fantastic, but it wasn't until probably about 3 years later I figured out what he was doing, and then I was petrified. Anytime it was on TV, my dad's like, "Michelle, Freddy's on." No, and I had to leave the room.
Man, you just reminded me too. I think I was a teenager when part 4 came out. And I remember there was a thing in the news, in the Age newspaper, was a quiz, win, blah, blah, blah. Freddie, I didn't know what you would win, but it was Freddie. So I just answered the question, sent it off in the mail, and I friggin' won. And you wouldn't believe it. So what came back was, I think, one of 10 full-size Freddie standees.
Nice.
I was like, this is huge. Do you know what I mean? Like a fucking one. It was like, yes, you know, and had it up in my bedroom. It was a full, and he was, you know, sort of, you know, with the with the glove, full size Robert Englund that I had in the bedroom as a
Nice.
standee, one of 10 in Australia or something.
That is so good.
Yeah,
So good. So apart from your films, you've also done a series of documentaries, the Down Under series. So you've got Sex Down Under, Aliens Down Under, Vampires Down Under, and Bigfoot Down Under. Are there any like topics you'd like to do, or was the four enough for you?
that's a really good question. They were kicked off by Mick Levy as well. Though, you know, he's my wingman. He's my partner in crime. You know, he wanted to make Sex Around the World. So Sex Down Under was actually supposed to be part one of a global kind of, I guess, filmic tour. And he was
Yeah.
very serious about it. He was going for funding and, you know, seeing all the right people. And this almost happened. You know, I was going to be getting on a plane and doing Sex Around the World. And as soon as we did episode one, some bloody guy in France beat us to it. And he had the, and it was Sex Around the World. He had the copyright, the name, and everything, and he'd already started shooting. So we just missed out. But I didn't want to shelve it. So I went to one of my distributors and I was like, "Would you take this as a one piece?" And he went, "Yeah, but can you do aliens as well?" And I was like, "Ooh, we got a little hook in here." So then I was like, "Yeah, we can." So then sort of Nick went away and I took the reins, and then I decided to do Aliens Down Under, which is really the predecessor to Alien Love, which you know is my new film that's about to come out.
Mm-hmm.
Because I discovered during that doco that there was the Westall event, which was when they claimed that in 1966 a UFO landed in Westall Primary School, and there's like 100 witnesses, and you can see all this stuff online.
Mm.
So my films, not only did I document that, but also my new film, my fictional film, is kind of based around that as well, that event, which was pivotal. So there was that. And then he was like, "Well, can you do Bigfoot?" And I'm like, "Bigfoot? There's no Bigfoot in Australia." And he goes, "Yeah, the Sasquatch. It's people have seen it." And I was like, "Oh my God, really?" So I started researching. And funnily enough, one of my art guys who does a lot of my DVD slicks lives in, I think it must be the Blue Mountains. And he knew all about it. He was like, "Oh, yeah, yeah, you know, a mate of mine reckons he saw a Sasquatch." And I'm like, "Fuck this shit. This thing's real." So I was talking to him about it. So that's where that came from. But then obviously when I reached out to you, you know, I saw that opportunity to do the vampires. So Vampires Down Under, which they changed to Vampires in Australia. I'm not sure why. There might have been a copyright issue there.
Yeah.
But that was really that's my favourite one, and they considered that to be the best of the four. The next one I would have done, oh yeah, and you're in that, which is another credit. The next one would have been Witches Down Under.
Ah.
That would have been the fifth one, which we didn't make. There was a request for a follow up to Sex Down Under because it's just like, you know, man, sex sells. It's just so goddamn popular, you know. But, you know, I love the fictional films too much. You know, I sort of, they'll keep saying to me, "Bring on the more docos." And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, but I love fiction," and, you know, get caught in the middle. But four is good. You know, I want to put the four into a little box set or something and maybe make another one if I get time. But I'm not like hell bent on it.
If you did a ghost one, I've got a story for you from Port
Arthur.
Oh,
yeah, look,
I've got
I
one
bet
for
you
you.
do. Ghosts Down Under. I mean, yeah, that'd be epic. There's more ghost stories in general than anything else.
Yeah.
Because obviously aliens and Bigfoot, you know, and they're just too niche. Someone said that if they were going to do Down Under, I can't remember who said it, that they would have done the black cat, because apparently there's a large black cat that people have seen. It sounds like a panther, but it can't be a panther because there's no panthers down under. Yep. There's been more sightings of this huge giant black cat than there have been of a Sasquatch in Australia. And then you've got drop bears and, you know, the bloody bunyip thing and this and that. I mean, it just, yeah, it goes on.
Yeah.
You know.
So going back to horror,
yeah,
you were actually the location scout for the original Saw short. How did that go down?
Yeah. Well, I actually, showing my age here, but I actually went to the premiere of, well, I call it Stygian. Some people call it Stygian, which is James Wan and Lee Whannell's first feature
Okay.
before Saw. And I have a copy. I shouldn't even be saying this live. Apparently, it's who gives a shit. Apparently, it's illegal to have a copy, or maybe he doesn't know I've got a copy, but it's extremely hard to get. And
Oh.
he tried to bury it because when Saw came out, I don't think he wanted to be known for it. And Shannon Young, I said Lee Whannell, I don't think it is. What am I talking? It's not Lee. It was Shannon Young. So Shannon Young and James did that film. And then obviously James went to do Saw, and Shannon did Razorings. And Shannon's doing a new film at the moment called Stricken. But again, back to Nick Levy, because Nick was in cahoots with Shannon. And when they were doing the short film Saw, which also stars Paul Motor, who I've also collaborated with on quite a few films, Nick rang me and said, I'm producing the short. We're looking for blah, blah, blah locations. Can you nail it? Because he knew how connected I was, and because I'd done a film called Hide and Seek, and I had kind of already done a big scout for the kind of location that they were looking for. So I'd met them at the Stygian premiere, but I wasn't buddy-buddy. But then because I'd met them and because Nick was involved and they said, can you help? Then I went and did my scout. So technically I was location scout for it, but I had no idea how big that he was going to become.
Yeah.
And it was the same year that I had Wolf Creek emailed to me. And it was on my desk, and I was writing something else, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I'll get around to it."
Just get around to it.
I just remember this. I think I was living in St Kilda at the time, in this amazing kind of arts colony, and I had Saw on the desk, I had Wolf Creek on the desk, I had Black Mass on the desk, I had my other feature film Utterson, which is the award-winning screenplay from Shriek Fest. It was my Jekyll and Hyde full-length film. Shell, if you had seen this table, man, it was just fucking horror galore, and no idea that where anyone was going to end up, and which path and all that sort of stuff. So that's that story.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, you did mention that your father was a priest, which I did know. I did look this up.
Did you really?
He was also an exorcist as well.
Oh God, are we going to go there?
Yeah.
Shit.
It goes with the theme, mate.
Oh dear, man. Oh dear. Well, look, we to put it into simplex kind of terms, to keep it short and sweet. Yeah, he was, because exorcism is highly Catholic, and he was Anglican, and Anglican religion doesn't really believe in exorcism as much as the Catholics do. But he was one of three guys, let's just say this, in the late 80s, who was called upon by bishops to perform exorcisms. And I was lucky enough to get these stories from him because obviously I'm his son.
Yeah.
And he probably voyeuristically at some point was hoping maybe I'd be a priest, and I used to say, well, I want to be a filmmaker. And I would say, filmmakers or directors are like priests, because they gather everybody together for an experience for 90 minutes, and then they reflect on it. It's like a sermon. So that was my argument. But I cleverly documented the ones that sounded believable, because everyone's a skeptic, even me. And I put it into a screenplay called Pray for the Dead, which is still the screenplay I have. Mm-hmm. And I tried to get that funded a few years back. And I'm not going to mention names, but I can absolutely tell you that it was stolen, because the film came out. So what happened was, there was a company, and I'm not going to say the name.
Yeah.
They put out a call for filmmakers to submit features, and they specifically wanted horror. And I think they were going to I think they had the budget for maybe 3 features, and they were calling for scripts. And they rejected my Pray for the Dead screenplay. But later, one of these films came out, and it was, when I saw the trailer, I thought it was Pray for the Dead. It was that similar. Wow. And I thought, shit, man, it's true what they say. You can get robbed.
Yeah.
And so I'm pretty sure that screenplay got robbed. It's not identical. I mean, I could still go out and make mine, but my father's funny like that. I wanted to pay homage to him and make this film, but he's very serious about that sort of client confidentiality clause.
Mm-hmm.
So even when I said to him I wanted to change names, he was like, yeah, but everyone's going to know that it's me and they're going to connect it back. He really didn't want it connected back, which was quite strange because I put this offer on the table and he kind of didn't bite, which was weird. Again, the universe telling me, Shell, not to do another crazy big budgeted horror film. I don't know why. I thought that was my calling. Jesus Christ.
I don't know. I think there's something about having the cult following I find a bit more appealing than just doing the big budget stuff, if that makes sense.
It's weird. I mean, I kind of now looking back also don't want to be just known as that horror guy. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, these guys that do like the Babadook or they do, this or that, or, they end up getting this label. And like look at Eli Roth. It'd be very hard for Eli Roth now to do anything else.
Yeah.
Even when he acts, he plays someone barbaric.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of don't want to do that. I feel like I've got more diversity. I think I've been more diverse and showed more light and shade and color to my entire repertoire than just being kind of pigeonholed into that one genre.
Well, with the new films you've got coming out soon with Alien Love and Disconnected, and also Bit of Desire, which I'm just in pre-production now, completely different things you've got going on there.
Completely different, my friend. So Alien Love really is, it's a sci-fi erotic thriller, and Bit of Desire, we won't even go into that just yet. But yeah, again, very different. And Disconnected, oh my God, completely different. I did Disconnected intentionally because I wanted to remind my audience that I can act in a drama. I wanted to remind them that, I'm not just that cult guy, that I can still do the job when asked. Do you know what I mean? Because you got to remind people sometimes. I think you got to be. In fact, it's interesting talking to you now because what I've realized is what I have been doing is trying not to get pigeonholed. Yeah. So I've continually been moving, and I think there's a real strength in that because I'm not bored. The audience can't be. They can't narrow me down or lock me down. So if I move, they've got to move with me. And some of it they'll like and some of it they won't. But I'm proving that, it's kind of like life, man, isn't it? It's like all colors of the rainbow.
Yeah.
That's what you want at the end of the day.
Exactly. And just to have fun with what you're doing as well.
We're having fun. Like, I love what you've said, about my stuff. I'm a guy having fun. I'm just like, don't take it too serious, Sometimes I'm taking the piss out of a whole. I have a movie I've made, which was literally for sport. I have a movie, I'm not going to say which one it is, that I couldn't give two shits about. And I've used it to try and test the waters with press, with distribution. It's almost like a playing field, because I meet these indie filmmakers and they're so frigging uptight and anxious and manic about their one movie, and it's just like, dude, relax. Just, don't take it that serious. Don't put your whole goddamn life savings invested into this one film. And I will say this too, at the end of the day, it's just a movie.
Exactly.
It's not life.
Exactly.
There's more important things to worry about, right? We've all got more things going on than the movie, So, yeah, and experiment, Don't be afraid. Don't make a mistake. Make a mistake. I remember acting with Stuart Orr in Radio Samurai, and he's a great actor. He didn't continue on with film acting, but he said to me, make a mistake. Who cares? And I used to go, well, make a mistake? Are you serious? Like I'm trying to get this perfect. He's like, dude, make a mistake. It kind of stayed with me. I like that he said that because it made me relax. It's like, just don't take things too serious. That's what I've tried to do as well. When I've met and worked with all these beautiful, amazing, creative artists, including yourself, on all these films, you learn something from each person. You take it with you. Throw out the bad, take the good.
I'm just starting with all this stuff. So if you've got advice to give, I'm more than happy to take it. I'm not going to sit there and go, well, I already know that. I'll be like, cool. So what I already know is correct. Fantastic.
Yeah. People can teach you things, and people, like, even if you don't like them, even if someone's kind of annoying you, or I had this experience on a movie, I won't say which one, where someone was really annoying me, but I still learned from it.
Yeah.
I learned what I don't like, and I also learned what I won't work with again. But also learned a bit about me, and then I looked at myself and I thought, oh well, maybe am I in the wrong? Am I tunnel vision, or am I the only one who cares?
Mm.
It's sort of, I think, you get tested. You get tested by people when you're in these creative melting pots, and you got so much ego and so much vanity.
Oh, yes.
And most people just can't even deal with that. Most people
Mm.
don't even want to make films because they just can't handle the bullshit. I've talked to so many guys on big budget films that have said to me, Nath, come back. Why do you keep doing your indie stuff? And I'll just say, because I can't handle the bullshit. There's just so much crap that goes on, so much crap that gets spoken. It'll drive you mad, just listening to people's egos. It'll drive you nuts.
You get to do things on your own terms. That's a lot
Yeah.
better. Yeah.
You get to own your own catalogue. That's the other thing too. After all these years and all these movies, I own my own catalogue. I've monetized my own catalogue. I've always said, particularly if you're in Melbourne, you can have a small part in a big budget or a big part in a small budget. That's how it works. Unless you've got the VCA master's degree in acting, or NIDA, or the right person, if you're not that kind of mega star power and that's not your path, then this is the other way to do it. You got to own your work.
Is there a genre or a type of film that you haven't made yet that you'd like to?
Well, it was pretty much sci-fi, but now I've done it. So, because you're right. Because one of my favorite directors is Kubrick. And what I love about Kubrick, as you know, is because he's got a movie in every genre. Mm-hmm. And I have kind of tried to mimic that somewhat, because Apocalypse Canoe was kind of my little war type movie. Hyde was my period piece. Tomboys was my horror. Disconnected's my drama. Model Behavior's my action thriller, blah, blah, blah. I kind of have already done it now. I almost do have. The only one I haven't done, what's funny, is the Western. But I'd have to do a bushranger film. And I was contemplating doing a story on Ben Hall, but then that guy made it.
Yes.
So I had a really good bushranger premise. Mine's called Bull Roarer. And it's another script that I haven't shot. But then I lost interest. And I just felt like, unless it's big budget, and I don't know. I think westerns in general they're very left field. Westerns not it's not as big a genre as others. And when you look at bushranger films, I mean, there's a very small market for that, particularly in this day and age. I don't even think people care. I hate to say that, but I don't see millennials jumping on iPads watching westerns or bushranger movies. It's just like they've never seen, Breaker Morant or the Mel Gibson Gallipoli, or, My Brother Jack, which I was in when I was bloody, a kid. They don't even watch these films.
What's advice you would give to someone who's trying to get into the industry?
Depends which part, because, it's pretty multifaceted. Are we talking acting? Are we talking filmmaking? Are we talking theatre? Are we talking camera crew on television? There's so many ways to do it.
Let's go filmmaking, say like directing. What would
filmmaking, you say? Directing, wow. You've really got to know everything. You've got to know every department. Like, I was very lucky because when I went to film school at Footscray, they're very hands-on because it's TAFE. And I did choose that over uni because TAFE's like very practical, and the people, they're not so much about the money. So they're willing to get their hands dirty.
Yeah.
Like, I've talked to students recently that are doing degrees, and I hate to say this, but some of them are a real letdown because they don't want to do any hard work. Like, they're very, like, the ones, Jesus Christ, I had a horrific experience end of last year. I probably haven't even said this online anywhere, live, trying to give some students internships on one of my new films. And just the self-entitlement and the the laziness and the wanting everything tomorrow, for free. It just like it nearly drove me mad. So going back to how I did it, you would go and work on a TV station for nothing. You would do that for weeks on end to prove yourself. Mm-hmm. And that's what I did. So I worked at ABC, I worked at Channel 9, but even in film school, I was boom mic, I was camera, I was ADing, so you've got to do all those roles if you're really serious about it. It's probably the kind of like the Ron Howard way of filmmaking. He's acted for so long, he can direct any actor better. So my advice is kind of like, get technical, pick up equipment, learn about lighting, learn how the camera works, learn about sound. You got to get technical, because when you're on set and something goes down, it's going to be on the director. It's going to be on you to fix it immediately. Otherwise, that film's over. And if you can't pick it up, everyone's going to go, oh, this guy's a bit, I'm not going back on this set. They're going to judge you. They're going to judge you straight up. So that's my advice. Get technical. Now it's, it's not like back in, when you and I were growing up. Now you can buy really good gear for cheap. There's absolutely no excuses. You can go out there. I've seen recently Chinese corporate video crews where they've got 10 guys and everything's like araldite and it's like compact and, you've got your drone and you've got, your dolly and it's friggin' this big, like it's just, the technology is unbelievable what you can do now, with not much money.
Yeah.
A full kit.
Thank you for being on, Nathan. I really appreciate your time tonight. For anyone who wants to watch Nathan's films, you can find them all over the place. You can find them on Amazon Prime in Australia, America, the UK, Tubi, Google Play. Where else are we going to find them, Nathan? Film rights?
Apple TV, even some on IMDb, Vudu, Redbox, pretty much all but Netflix. But I've got one on Stan and then another one possibly going to Netflix. But yeah, again, going back to where my audience is in America, it's all about Prime. And even as a Prime subscriber myself, that all the movies I want to watch are in there.
Yeah.
Funnily enough. But obviously Netflix for Cobra Kai.
Yeah, perfect. Well, thank you for coming on to the show tonight. I really appreciate it. And I'll speak to you another time.
100%. Thanks, Cheryl.
For everyone watching, thank you for everyone watching. Like and subscribe, do the usual things, and we'll see you in the next one. Thank you.